Which came first, oil or electricity? This is Ronald Stein. You can find more details of him at heartland.org. Welcome, Ronald Stein.
Armando, glad to be aboard.
Thank you, Ronald. I did a very short research in ChatGPT. Let me show to our audience the result. I asked it to ChatGPT, who came first, oil or electricity? And uh, uh, began in the late 19th century with the development of electric telegraph. So ChatGPT answered that, of course, oil came first, came before uh, electricity. What do you think? What's your explanation about this, Ronald?
Well, exactly. It's not that oil came before electricity, it's the products from oil came before electricity. It's the products that make electricity. You know, the insulation, all the electronics, it's all made from oil derivatives that human ingenuity has been able to drive out of manufacturing crude oil. And like you say, we're a materialistic society. And, you know, the fact we've grown from, 1 billion to 8 billion in less than 200 years is not because of oil, it's because of the products we get from oil. And we have a product supply chain that is now required to keep the 8 billion people alive. And if we want to get rid of oil, we need to find out where the supply chain of the products are going to come from.
And electrical generation, electricity itself requires products, that you are saying about that. And these products are made a great part of these products are made from oil, from naphtha and natural gas, rich natural gas. Which are the source of these products?
Well, basically, it's crude oil. It's crude oil that you get the oil derivatives that you can make insulation and all the electronics, all the components. We've talked about this before. If you look in your house, your workplace, the hospital, trying to identify something that was not made from crude oil. Well, the same thing applies in power generation. We've got hydropower, we've got nuclear, natural gas, coal, wind, solar, all the components that allow us to generate electricity are made from the oil derivatives we get out of oil. I mean, even the light bulb from Edison is made from oil. So, like you say, oil came first, the oil derivatives came second, and after that, we started getting into electricity. Because remember, we're a materialistic society. We live on the products in our daily lives, the iPhones and iPads and, computers and appliances. That's all made from oil because wind and solar can make nothing. They can make no tires. They can make no insulation. They can make no toothpaste. They can make no appliances. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So it's just electricity.
For example, in a car, in an EV car, for instance, much better to talk about EV, which parts are made from oil, from naphtha?
100%.
Yeah, but the steel, the cover is not plastic.
Well, even the steel, the equipment to make the steel is made from oil, to be able to process. So it all gets down to the basics that if you don't have oil, you're not going to be able to have steel for the car. And like I say, the leather, all the insulation, the electronics, the tires, it's like I say, it all comes from oil. And if you have to mine, even the batteries, the batteries have a lot of lithium and cobalt in them and other metals. You can't get that lithium unless you have monster equipment to mine for it. Well, to make that equipment, you're getting back to oil to make the equipment. So everything gets down to the foundation of oil started this whole thing.
This is interesting because you are talking about several tiers in the supply chain process, manufacturing process.
Yes.
And in each one has something related to oil products.
Well, you've probably seen the assembly lines at automobile manufacturers. You know, all the robotic stuff. I mean, again, you're back to oil. Now, if you need steel for the robotics, you need oil to, to be able to make the steel. And so it's, like I say, it's the basic component. And, like I say, we've got 8 billion that we're trying to keep alive and well. And the tragic thing of the 8 billion on the planet, there's more than 6 billion are living on less than $10 a day. Armando, they haven't joined the Industrial Revolution. Some don't have running water, sanitation, and like if we get rid of oil, we could be easily losing a couple billion people to, starvation, diseases, weather-related deaths. It's it's really tough, and there's no silver bullet answer to solve the world's problems. If we've got emissions, emissions are probably going to kill some people, but when you talk about longevity in the wealthy countries, our longevity is like over 80 years old. In the developing countries, they're not going to make it that long, not without sanitation and heating and ventilation and medical equipment, and so they're hurting.
Yeah, let me show on screen a comment from Benjamin. Within car industry, electricity came first, I guess. What do you think about this?
Well, no, electricity came after oil. And
he's being very direct to the point. So,
well, think about it. Before the 1800s, there was no electricity. You couldn't have it because to generate electricity, you need the components to make all the equipment and controls and everything
connectors.
Else. Exactly. And so, before the 1800s, Thomas Edison was, living with his light bulb, and American ingenuity was able to determine, how we get these oil derivatives and how we can use them. And then the creativity is, we started with a couple products. Now we got more than 6,000 products in our daily lives that we've become very accustomed to in the wealthy countries.
It's so interesting what you are saying, because pay my attention the several tiers in the supply chain, in the manufacturing process. And do you see that the wealthy countries are sending the dirty manufacturing plants and demands for the third world, for the developing countries, let's see, to become protected about this?
Oh, yes, without a doubt. In fact, when I wrote the book with Todd Royal, Clean Energy Exploitations, it was all about that, because all the exotic minerals and metals to go green for batteries and wind turbines and solar panels are coming from developing countries that have no environmental controls and no labor controls. They're exploiting people that have yellow, brown, and black skin. Some of these kids are 6 years old mining for the stuff by hand. And the environmental degradation is atrocious. But it's okay because it's over there. We can't see it.
Far from me.
Far from me, yes.
Yeah. Let me share some of the products that oil can generate: gasoline, diesel, kerosene. This is the first part. The second part I obtained it here: asphalt, paraffin, refined asphalt. And the third one, that's more related to that, what you are talking about, rubber and detergents and plastics.
Exactly. A lot of the fertilizers and pesticides are coming from natural gas, and which is great because it allows us to grow a lot more products in a smaller area. And if these developing countries that don't have the fertilizers and pesticides, it's hard for them to grow their own food.
China is one of the countries that are manufacturing a lot of these parts, or the previous tiers. Sometimes the United States have assembly process, but not manufacturing raw materials and so on.
Right.
Do you see this being moved, or the United States can return some parts of manufacturing plants and process to them?
I would say very, very unlikely, because if, here in California, we have, I think, a supply of lithium. They think there's a supply of lithium in the desert, but to mine for it, Armando, you're going to have to get environmental permits. Now the environmentalists are going to stand up and say, hey, not here, and you're going to have to adhere to, labor laws. You're not going to have 6-year-old kids mining for the stuff by hand, getting paid nothing. And so, the cost of the lithium and the cobalt is going to just, skyrocket, which is going to elevate the price of the EV. And you can't afford to elevate the price of the EV. It's already out of reach for most people. So it's, we're reaching, you remember the oil embargo from 1973? The United States was importing more and more oil from OPEC, and OPEC, turned the valve off. In the United States, we were hurting big time. Well, we're almost getting to that point with China, because they control all the green. I mean, we got this green movement, that's unstoppable in the United States. And if China turns the valve off, or, stops shipping all that green material to us, the green movement comes to a halt.
So United States are doing that. China becomes richer.
Oh, yes.
with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. They got the supply, we got the demand.
That's right. But the other side, environmental impacts are going to China, not to the United States, to California. California is clean. The sky is blue.
Yes, exactly. We got a nice clean bubble. And I joke, I jokingly, I say that Governor Newsom only breathes California air. He wants to clean up California. Don't do it here.
Yeah.
Don't do it here.
Limited
Do it over
to
there.
California only. Yeah. There's
Yeah,
a wall.
By not
So,
doing it, California is the most environmental controlled location in the world.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, you probably want to manufacture it here. But if you have emissions, Newsom doesn't want emissions. And so, like I say, he keeps California green, but he's increasing greenhouse gas emissions around the world.
That's right. But Ronald, before the abandonment of oil, if it's possible, I'm not sure that's possible. We need, the society needs to have a solution for that, and we do not have a solution, replacement for oil. And we will have something?
Well, we've had 200 years to try and replace it, come up with a clone. Anybody that gets a manufacturing process, someone's trying to duplicate it and do it cheaper and more, cost effectively. We've been unable to duplicate it. And I was on a TV interview in New York, and the first question to me was, I understand, Ronald, that you're pro-oil. And Armando, I said, first, hey, I'm not pro-oil, I'm pro the products we get from oil. If we can provide a supply chain to keep the products going so we can make appliances, make asphalt for the roads, and, make the tires, hey, I'm all for it. There's nothing sacred about oil. But the one thing that I think society is focusing on, and they've been doing it for, hundreds of years, is keep improving efficiencies and conservation. I mean, today's cars, used to get 10 miles to a gallon. Now they're getting 40 and 50 to a gallon. And, the fact that we have oil, we don't want to throw it away just because we have it. We want to conserve it, because is it going to be around in 1,000 years? Probably yes. In 1,000,000 years, I don't know. So, like you say, it's everything's going to be a limited supply. But as much as there's an overabundance of oil in most countries, there's a very, very limited supply of the lithiums and the cobalts, all the exotic minerals and metals. In fact, the cobalt is in one country, Africa. They have most of it. And lithium, a big chunk of it is in, Brazil. And Yeah, you have the limited sources for this. And not only limited sources, the EV batteries require huge amounts. The iPhone requires, a microgram, but, you need a microgram versus like 25 pounds of lithium in a Tesla battery. The battery itself is like 1,000 pounds. And the numbers just don't add up, because to get all the exotic minerals and metals just for a 1,000-pound Tesla battery, collectively, you got to move about 500,000 pounds of earth to get the various metals.
Uh-huh.
Then you talk about, well, we want 18-wheelers to be electric. Well, the 18-wheelers has a 16,000-pound battery. So the difference between a 1,000-pound battery and a 16,000-pound battery, now you got to move 8 million pounds of earth to get the various exotic minerals and metals to make one battery.
On that.
And it's, like I say, there's just not enough known lithium and cobalt and exotic minerals metal to build that many cars and trucks with EV batteries for them. So it's, yeah, like I say, what we have, I think we want to, continue to improve upon it. Appliances are more efficient than they were, 50 years ago, and keep improving efficiencies and conservation, and don't
It's a key
waste it.
point.
Yeah, that's got to be the goal of all 8 billion people. Even the 6 billion that don't have anything, it's hard for them to conserve. They got
But
nothing to conserve.
they can reach this position very soon. So we do not know, and the multiplication of the requirements will be something crazy. So imagine that 6 million,
Yeah.
6 billion people.
Well, like I say, all the people that are crossing the border, the United States border, they're coming from not the really poor countries. They're developed countries, but they don't have the lifestyle that the wealthy countries have. And they're trying to improve their lives by, crossing the border. And like I say, they sacrifice their lives sometimes just to get over here. And then you got some of the developing countries that are, separated from the United States by oceans. And then they're not going to cross the border, And so, but it's, like I say, we just got to focus on continued improvement on efficiencies and conservation.
Yeah. Ronald, tell us a little bit about your interview or conversation with the Chicago newspaper. What were the topic and what you said?
Well, the topic was really geared around conversations. There's got to be conversations because, you got, the left and the right, and that's the one thing that we're lacking. I mean, I would love to have a conversation with President Joe Biden. He wants to get rid of oil, but I don't think he wants to get rid of the hospitals or get rid of all the militaries or close all the airports. Remember, Armando, it was really geared around conversations, because when I give a presentation, I do not like to give a prepared presentation. I want to have a fireside chat. I want to talk about what you want to talk about. And recognizing that most people are intimidated to ask an intelligent question on energy, because energy can get pretty complicated pretty quick. I proactively provide the moderator and the entire audience 50 open-ended questions. Some are geared around, EVs, wind, solar, nuclear, but they're open-ended questions. And if the audience wants to talk about EVs, there's some questions. They can stand up and ask an open-ended question, which allows me to talk about it. And my conversation hopefully generates, a conversation with that person. Because after we have a fireside chat, and that's what the article in the Chicago Tribune was all about, after we have a conversation, I would feel comfortable that that person can go home and talk about energy at the dinner table. Mm-hmm. Because there is a difference in the word energy. Energy is either electricity or products. And they don't quite mix, because electricity generates no products. And oil is not used for generating electricity. It's only used to make the products for electricity. Think about it the other way too, that everything that needs electricity, we're talking iPhones, televisions, radios, etc. is made from oil. I mean, electricity can charge my iPhone, but it can't make my iPhone. This communication we're having here with, the electronics and iPads and et cetera, doesn't happen without electricity. But the iPads are not made by wind turbines and solar panels. It's made from oil. So it's a different lifestyle. And like I said, there's got to be a conversation, because the hardcore people that want to get rid of oil, we're talking about, going to the moon so we can go to Mars. Well, we're not going to go there with electricity.
That's a good point, because some regions, including Texas, the grid are, let's say, in the limits, are working almost in shortage. And which energies source, primary energies, you see most convenient to feed these grids?
Well, we've become very dependent on continuous, uninterruptible electricity. Computers, hospitals, airports, they need continuous electricity. If your computer gets a little power outage, it has to reboot. And if you're on the operating table, you want continuous electricity to keep the lights on for the surgeon. And the misnomer is, they keep talking about, we have a lot of wind and solar nameplate rated electricity. Well, nameplate doesn't mean much, because wind and solar don't work most of the time. And, you can have a nameplate rating, but if it's not working, you really need a nameplate rating on an annual basis. Now you take, hydro, you take nuclear, you take coal, natural gas, those power plants generally operate about 95% of the time year round. That's classified as continuous uninterruptible electricity. Because intermittent electricity, it doesn't work to keep airports running, and it doesn't work to keep, operating rooms running or computers. And it's the continuous uninterruptible electricity. That's the difference between the electrical generation systems we have. The two new ones we're bringing in, wind and solar, they're not continuous and they're not uninterruptible. They're intermittent.
And in reality, in what energies investors in the United States are doing more investments nowadays in terms of energy? Nuclear?
No, in the United States, nuclear is probably gaining a lot of momentum everywhere else except the United States.
Interesting.
Yeah, United States, we are trying to close down nuclear in favor of wind and solar.
Like Germany.
Yes. We had 2 nuclear power plants in California, San Onofre, which closed several years ago, and Diablo Canyon, which is destined to close, but they gave it a life extension because we're running out of power. But no, new nuclear in the United States that's a tough road to hoe, because everybody wants to get rid of, coal and natural gas and nuclear. We want to go renewables, but renewables don't work most of the time. And we've got a lot of states that have, weather that's not as conducive as California and Florida. California and Florida, we've got pretty calm weather, and but some of the other states have, harsh winters and hot summers, and like I said, the weather is totally different. So it's going to be an eye opener. I think Germany is probably in the forefront of where the United States is going. Germany was at the forefront of going green with their program. Today, they have the highest cost of electricity in the world because they can't generate it, and they're buying it. And I think that's where the United States is going. I see that in California, because California, of all the states in the country, California imports more electricity than any other state.
Oh my God.
From our adjoining neighbors. Now, we have the demand, they have the supply.
Wow.
Now, as long as they have the supply, that's fine. But if they run
like
short,
West and China is something related for supply chain.
Yes.
China has the supply, and West the demands, something
Right.
like that.
Exactly.
But tell me, Ronald, what's the real reason that the government in the United States stopped authorizations for LNG? Is there a specific reason?
I think it really gets down to the basics of the misuse and misunderstanding the word energy. I mean, they want to get rid of LNG because wind and solar is going to take over the world. They want to get rid of oil because wind and solar is going to take over the world. And they want to get rid of, natural gas because wind and solar is going to take over the world. But it can't happen because wind and solar make nothing for society. And there's no silver bullet answers. That's the thing that I think most policymakers refuse to accept, because there are certain areas where you have LNG, take advantage of it, use it. China, they're building the equivalent of 2 coal-fired power plants a week. Coal's abundant, it's inexpensive, and when you have no environmental laws, emissions don't matter. They just want to get electricity.
Yeah, that's impressive because they have no limits to produce with coal and other energy basics.
Right.
Interesting. But California has
a lot. We got a lot of controls here.
But this is very important. This point that you mentioned, that products and electricity, and do not talk about energy. Energy is something related to a whole vision, but talking about products and about electricity is something new. It's not common, people talking about this.
Exactly, because to convert oil into these products, the energy comes into it because you have so much energy to be able to make those products. But in reality, you're down to 2 things. Do you want a materialistic society based on the products we now have, or do you want electricity? And you can't have electricity unless you have the products. So it gets down to, if you want wind and solar to run the world, how are you going to be able to make wind and solar without oil? No. And again, you want to have electricity, to charge your iPhone. But if you get rid of oil, there's no iPhones to charge. It's
Who came first?
That's right.
To the conclusion of our conversation today, Ronald Stein, please explain a little bit more about your phrase in your article. We are living a time where conversations are silenced so that stupid people won't be offended. What is this?
That's 100% correct, because the policymakers are setting the tone. They got the microphone, and they're basically saying we're jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. End of conversation. That's the problem, Armando. There's no conversations. I would like to ask President Joe Biden. He wants to get rid of oil. But my question to him is, do you really want to get rid of hospitals that didn't exist 200 years ago? You really want to get rid of, the military that didn't exist 200 years ago? The appliances, all the electronics, it's all based on oil. Where's the supply chain of products to keep 8 billion people alive if you get rid of oil? But he flies around in his 400-ton airplane, which is 100% made from oil, powered by aviation fuel, which comes from oil, and he's screaming, "We're going to get rid of oil." Armando, give me a break. The only good thing about getting rid of oil, you ground Air Force One.
and too much emotion in this discussion. So science, you need to have contradictions and arguments, not emotions.
Yes. Like I said, there's pros and cons. And, if we have emissions, from our materialistic society, it's definitely going to affect some people's healths. But yes, when you take a look at, we've got 8 billion people. Yeah, nothing's going to keep them all alive. But I think to maximize the amount of people you do keep alive, you want to get these people appliances and sanitation and, running water. And, you're going to probably have some emissions because of that. Yes, a few people are going to die, but if you get rid of oil, you got to start the conversation. Get rid of oil. We're back to the 1800s. There were no transportation. There were no hospitals. There were no appliances, no electronics, no telecommunications, no space program, no heating and no ventilating. There was no militaries other than horses. And that's an industry that, like I say, they just weren't around a few hundred years ago, and there's got to be a discussion about that.
Yeah, that's right. My last point for you, Ronald. The replacement of oil, I know that takes time, a long time, but which products can come? What's the perspective for the replacements? Is biofuels, or what are them?
Well, the challenge is if you do come up with a replacement for crude oil, is how to commercialize it. Because, like you could run a car on French fry grease. The problem is there aren't enough people eating that many French fries to get that much grease. And so it's to industrialize it. It might work in a few instances, but now you're talking thousands, millions, hundreds of millions. That's where the challenge comes in. Can you commercialize it? And so, yeah, like you say, there's all kinds of ways to, make an automobile go, but they're one-offs. And it's the commercialization. How do you do that? And, if you come up with this magic product that makes a car run, well, that's great. But is there enough of that to make 1 million cars run or 1 billion cars run?
Yes.
And so that's the challenge. Yeah, commercialization, because like I say, we've got 8 billion people on this planet. And, we know from statistics that more than 6 billion people, 6 billion, are living on less than $10 a day.
Oh my God.
They cannot be living the life that we're living. And it is atrocious. And, we'd like to have them live the lifestyle we're living. And if you do, then there's going to be a lot more products needed to keep those extra 6 billion people alive with, appliances and iPhones and electronics. Some of these countries don't really have airports. Who wants to fly to that country, And so, yeah, that's a challenge. And like I say, there's no silver bullet answers, but, what method is going to keep 8 billion people alive, most of the 8 billion people alive? Today, it's probably the products we're getting from oil. So time will tell.
That's great. Ronald Stein, always a pleasure talking
Armando,
to you.
same here.
Same.
Yeah,
Thank
got to
you.
be conversation. Got to be conversations.
Let's keep conversations. Yeah. Thank you. Have a great day for you.
Thank you. Have a good day,
Thank you.
Armando.
Bye-bye.
Take care.